Okay, my name is Jennifer Weber. I work for the University of Arizona in the Pesticide Safety Education Program. And this is a statewide program serving all of Arizona, but I'm based out of Maricopa County Cooperative Extension. And I'm very happy today to talk to you about pesticide safety measures. And I think it ties in greatly with a lot of the information that Ayman presented, because he talked about pesticides, it's the misuse of pesticides. And I think that was a really great statement. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to highlight, I'll give you an overview of my presentation. There we are. I'll start with an overview of pests and pesticides. And then I will talk about pesticide products that you might use at work and at home. Then we'll talk about the pest control decision-making process, the pesticide safety measures that are in place to protect people who are using pesticides, consumers, and the environment. And then finally, I'll wrap up with a few ideas of activities that might fit in your classrooms. A pest is an undesirable organism that injures humans, desirable plants, animals, manufactured products, or natural substances. But everyone sees and defines pests a little differently. For example, just look at this collage of that we have on the screen. Which of these would you consider to be pests? Let's take the pigeons, for example. A lot of people like to go to see pigeons in the park. They'll feed them. But if you have pigeons on your roof or at your office building, suddenly those pigeons could be considered a pest. The spider, just another example, spiders are beneficials when you need them to control flies, mosquitoes. They're very pretty, but if you had a spider such as a black widow spider in your garage near all your tools, that particular spider in that location, you would consider a pest. A pesticide is any substance or mixture of substances intended to prevent, destroy, repel, or mitigate a pest. And mitigate means to minimize the damage of that pest. And those of you, I noticed on our registration form, there were a lot of people who teach agricultural education. So you're probably familiar with plant growth regulator or plant regulators, growth regulators, desiccant, which dries out the pest, and defoliant. Defoliant, those of you who are familiar with cotton production, defoliants remove the leaves. They take off the foliage, and that makes it easier to harvest the cotton. Pesticide is the umbrella term, and it includes the different types of pesticides. You're probably very familiar with insecticides. And maybe you've used or seen the rodenticides baits here, such as the box on the top. Maybe there are some of those stations around the school, or if you've gone to conferences and noticed them out in resorts. So those might be familiar to you. And then herbicides to control weeds. Perhaps you use herbicides at home or around, you've seen people maybe use them around the fence lines at the school. Did you know that these products are also pesticides? And we're starting to use more and more disinfectants. The Lysol on the left is a disinfectant spray. You might have a Lysol that is just for cleaning surfaces, but the moment it makes a pesticidal claim such as this one that says kills 99.9% of germs, kills viruses, bacteria, mold, and mildew, it is making a pesticidal claim, and therefore it needs to go through the registration process. Same with 2000 Flushes, this bleach. It says it kills bacteria. If it just said whitens and brightens, it wouldn't be a pesticide. In the middle, we have a mosquito repellent and a bed bug spray. So those are pesticides as well. And this picture, I've used this several times over the years, and now it is even more significant. There are so many people in this swimming pool, and this is just to help you realize that pesticides such as swimming pool chlorine, a lot of these are beneficial to us. There's even a lazy river around the outside, but there's so many people here. This is before social distancing mandates were in effect. And so you can see that we do use pesticides as a tool, as a way to protect us. Now we're going to pull back the curtain on the pest control decision-making process. What I'd like to do is put it in context of maybe a program at your school, and then we will relate it back to the pest control decision-making process in agricultural production areas. So imagine you have a school rose garden. It's a fundraiser. Maybe you're growing roses for a Mother's Day project, and one day you notice a few aphids on the roses. No big deal, it's just a few. So you don't worry too much. But over time, it reaches a point when you think, wow, there are a lot of aphids. I better do something. I have to control these aphids before they ruin the quantity or the quality of the roses, because otherwise we'll lose money on this project. So you decide to take action by trying a variety of pest control methods. You decide, oh, you know what? I'm going to tell the students they can get 10 extra bonus points for every 20 aphids they pick off the roses. Then you figure, well, you know what? Why don't I just try washing the aphids off the plant? And someone else at the school says, you know, I've heard about this great thing. It's called biological control. You can buy ladybugs. They will eat the aphids, and it'll be great. The students will think it's a lot of fun. So each method helps to a certain degree, but for some reason, the aphid population continues to increase. You get to the point where you have to make another pest control decision. You decide to use a pesticide to control the aphids. This is very similar to the pest control decision-making process performed by agricultural producers. They are constantly monitoring, going out, scouting, looking for pests, observing the damage, and making decisions. They combine methods. As I mentioned earlier in the previous screen, there is biological control, mechanical control, a lot of different options. And then they keep records of the methods that have worked and haven't worked, so that they have the background information that they're building upon, so that they know that helps in their decisions in the next year or next season. They attend industry meetings and continuing education courses, and they talk with other growers to get a good idea. Is anybody else experiencing this same pest problem? And if so, what methods have been successful? They review the latest science and technology, and they also work with pest control advisors and university researchers. There are a lot of safety measures because pesticides are a tool that growers can use, but just very similar to a situation we're going through right now with the coronavirus, you can't just put a vaccine out there. You need to do a lot of studies. It can take several years and millions and billions of dollars to get a pesticide approved and registered for use. So not much different from the process to get a vaccine approved as well. So why does it take so long to register a new product? You have to do lab screening and testing, field trials and research. And then the information needs to be provided to EPA so they can review all of the results from these studies, prepare labels that are clear and easy to follow, and then the product needs to be registered as well. This is going to show you, this is an illustration for something called the LD50. This is one of those initial laboratory studies that I was mentioning. The LD50 is the lethal dose to kill 50% of the test population. And the test population is not a town. They don't fly over with pesticides and spray a town. It's actually performed in a laboratory with laboratory animals. I'm going to show you on the screen. We're going to, in our LD50 test, we're going to use laboratory rats. So we have 4 laboratory rats. We're going to give them each a dose of the active ingredient in this pesticide we're testing. Okay, so they each get a dose. and the fourth one dies. So that's one of the original four. Is that 50% of the test population? It's not, it's 25%. So we're going to give the remaining three an additional dose. Okay, now the second one died. 2 out of 4, that is 50%. So that would indicate that is our LD50. The LD50 measures the acute toxicity, the immediate health effects. It doesn't tell us about the chronic effects, about the long-term health effects. There are other studies that would help to determine the chronic effects. This is just the immediate result. And that is going to determine the signal word that is placed on the label. You're probably familiar with the 3 signal words: danger, warning, and caution. The danger is your most toxic. Perhaps just a drop would be extremely acutely toxic. Your second category is warning, and your third category is caution. We're talking about field trials and research, also very important. What the researchers will try to determine is if the pesticide is going to be effective. So they're testing the efficacy. Is it effective in controlling the target pest? If it is not, then it isn't going to work effectively. And then in the process of controlling the target pest, does it damage the crop or other plants or the treatment site itself? Would it be hazardous to bees or other beneficial insects? What about the impacts on wildlife, livestock, and pets who may be in the area? So all of this information is gathered, and that again is why it takes a lot of money and a lot of years to study these pesticides before they go to market. Another thing that they want to know is about the additional environmental impacts on birds, fish, and other aquatic life. What are the pesticides' impacts on surface and groundwater? And how long do the residues remain in the air, soil, water, and plants? That's something called the half-life. They study the time that it takes for half of that pesticide to break down in the air, soil, water, and plants. And each pesticide is different, and the half-life in each one of those is going to be different as well. All of the information is used to create the pesticide label. And again, just piggybacking on something very important that Dr. Mostafa said, you must follow the label. The label has key information, and I'll just start from the top. It does list the brand name, manufacturer's name and address, the ingredients, both the active ingredients, and then it lists the percentage of inert ingredients, which could be water or a coloring agent or something that helps it work more effectively. The signal word, as we just discussed, danger, warning, or caution, and precautionary measures. These are steps that the pesticide handler would follow in order to protect the environment, themselves, other people, and then also the environmental hazards, so they can be well aware of what they need to do when they go out to the field first, or the site where they'll apply the pesticide and evaluate the area, and they'll know which measures they could take to protect the environment. Re-entry and harvest restrictions. How long must they wait after the application before it's safe to re-enter that area and before it's safe to harvest the crop? Protective clothing such as long sleeve shirt, long pants, shoes, and socks might be listed on the label, or personal protective equipment might be as well, such as gloves, eye protection, or respiratory protection. There's also first aid instructions should somebody become exposed to pesticides, and information on how to use it correctly. And it would be great if that was the last step. Oh, here's the pesticide label. We'll put it on the container and you're done. Read it, it's fine. But no, there is additional regulatory requirements in place to protect the user, consumers, and the environment. There is a federal requirement that all pesticide handlers who are working in agricultural operations and agricultural field workers must attend pesticide safety training every year. The people who provide that training also need to be certified so that they can show their competency in providing the correct information and in the ways to, thank you, and ways that they, I'm sorry, so that to provide the information effectively. People who work with restricted use pesticides, those are the pesticides that have been deemed either extremely toxic to the user or the environment if used incorrectly. They take a certified applicator exam, pass it with 75%. It's a 90-question, 90-minute timed exam. And then they also attend continuing education courses each year. Some of the additional safety measures. People who apply, mixed load apply pesticides, even the mechanics, they need to follow label instructions and they need to look at the rate. How much water are they going to put in that tank for the area and the type of equipment that they're going to use. They need to evaluate the area where they will apply the pesticide, concentrate on the weather, take drift reduction measures into effect. There are a lot of things that they could do to make sure that that pesticide stays on the site and doesn't drift to other areas. And also to make sure that their equipment is clean and that they maintain it properly so it works correctly. There's enforcement of these pesticide regulations at the state, federal, and tribal level. The tribal pesticide regulatory agencies are very active in Arizona as well. We have our Arizona Department of Agriculture, and we have federal EPA that gets involved in some of the more serious cases. They do field inspections, record-keeping inspections, and marketplace inspections where pesticides are sold. And they also have outreach and education components. The inspectors don't just simply go out, here's your fine. They are working with the growers, the operators, to make sure that they understand the regulations, why those regulations exist, and how to come back into compliance should they be out of compliance on certain issues. And that is for both agricultural and structural pest control operations. My last section, how does this topic fit into your subject areas? I have a couple of ideas that I just wanted to toss out for you. I know we often have math teachers, and I thought if you're teaching geometry, you can go to Google Earth and get an aerial view of some of the fields through Google Earth. This shows pivot irrigation systems in Cochise County. We also have a lot of teachers who are teaching ag education, so it's possible your students will be working on their own farming operations. You could even ask them, okay, what are the hazards in this picture? Find at least 5. Okay, we have a dog, we even have a cafe mocha in this picture. And then ask them how to reduce that hazard. The culinary arts teachers, I know that a lot of teachers in general use the fluorescent tracer. This comes in a powder or a gel, comes with a fluorescent light, and you can, I know teachers use it to teach students how to wash their hands appropriately. But the culinary arts teachers may want to consider purchasing this to make sure that their students know how to properly get residues off of produce. And then lastly, this is something I just found recently. This is from Steve, I hope it doesn't start, Steve Spangler's science video explaining temperature inversion layers. And this is something that we really need to focus on pesticide safety when that inversion layer is just hovering in the air. Pesticides could get trapped in that layer, and whenever there is a wind, it might travel to other areas. So we're always talking about inversion layers, but it's a difficult concept because you need to explain the hot air up above, cool air below, and how those pesticides could get trapped. So I have the link there that you can access, but you can also just search for inversion layer. I'll give you my contact information. If you're looking for ideas for lessons, I will be happy to send those to you. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for allowing me to squish a lot of information into a short amount of time. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I'd like to learn from your practices as well, maybe something that I can implement in my program. And as I mentioned, I'd be happy to share ideas that I've discovered as well. Thank you.